Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome once again to Changing the Questions, a show where we take one question each week around the world of professional wrestling and dissect it thoroughly. My name is Paul Laporte. Joining me once again, my usual partner in crime, Mike Miner.
Good evening. Or good day.
Whenever you're listening to this.
I thought we were going to turn the question on its head and not dissect it this time.
I don't know. No, this time we'll dissect it. We'll turn it on its head the next time. And then we'll knock it on its ass the time after that.
Sounds great.
We're going to knock questions on their ass. All right, and the question that we are dissecting this time...
Questions will cower in fear of us!
...is, should WWE have a women's-only television program?
Tough one.
Obviously, you have the hashtag Divas Revolution that has been kind of faltering on the main roster, but has been flourishing in NXT.
Yeah.
Where women's wrestling is much more prominent than it was even 5 years ago, let alone 10, 15 years ago.
Much more respected, much
Absolutely.
more revered.
And the women in the WWE currently are seen as really legitimately some of the best women's wrestlers in the world, and that is not a case that you can make for virtually any other period in the company's history, with the exception of, 6 months in 1995.
Did she turn into Becky Lynch there for a second? Is that what happened with the months? The months?
6 months? I don't know. So, the question is that should WWE continue this momentum by giving the women's division just its own program? Now, obviously, there are women's-only independent companies, or that are the majority of their matches are women's matches. Should WWE follow suit and do some sort of show, whether it's Full Sail University or just prior to, a Raw or SmackDown taping like they did with Main Event and Superstars.
Or like they even planned for SmackDown years ago. That was what SmackDown was originally supposed to be, was an entire women's show, week to week.
So should they pull the trigger on that and try that this time? I'm going to take it first.
Yeah,
I'll go first this time. Hell yes, they should. I've actually been a really strong proponent for this suggestion for a long time. I personally just don't think that the writers for Raw and for SmackDown, just the main roster in general, are going to devote enough time and brain power to writing a good, compelling women's division. In NXT, they clearly proven that they have. But the thing is that it's gotten to the point where the NXT wrestlers are not... It's this, NXT, especially in the women's division, is not a developmental feeder for the main roster where, they're learning and getting better and then they go up to the big show. You can pull most of those women off of it, not that big show. You can pull most of those women out of NXT and integrate them right into the main roster. And I personally think that they should capitalize on that momentum by just take the NXT women's division, take the WWE women's division, let's put them in Full Sail, let's give them their own hour-long show, and you'll have a big, fairly healthy division. They have some other women coming in that they can use and utilize, and I think it would be received just as well as NXT, if not better, as long as they devoted the same resources to it and gave them the same freedom and didn't put them into the same stereotypes that they kind of have to fit on the main roster.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying with that. On the other hand, I'll play devil's advocate, I guess, and say no. At this point, not yet. I don't think they should have one yet. Do I want one? Hell yeah, I would love to have one. But if they can't book a couple of matches right on Raw from week to week, then how are they going to book an entire show revolved around female wrestling? Would I love to see that? Yeah, of course. But they can't book men's wrestling right now. They can't book female wrestling on Raw. NXT, they're knocking it out of the park. No doubt. But there's the problem with overexposure, which is what they've done with Raw every week, just in general. But there's also the argument on my side that women typically don't last nearly as long in the business as a man does. I'm not saying that should be the thing to keep them from getting their own show, but they're going to look at it like an investment. They're going to invest in these women. They're going to try to get as much out of them as they can, but they don't want to, push somebody hard and for a long time, or try to push them for a long time, only for them to leave at 28, 29, maybe even 30 years old. At maybe the latest, Tamina's getting up there herself in age. Nothing against her. She's fantastic, but she is a rarity in this business. And I can't see them doing it because it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resources.
So do you just think the turnover would be too high then?
I think the turnover would be kind of high. I mean, I think Lita and Trish both retired around age 30, 31, 32.
And,
there's been
of
other
course,
female
there's been rumors
wrestlers.
that Brie Bella is retiring.
Brie Bella,
this
Nikki is very.
She may be. That's
very
an
hurt.
injury, though. You really can't.
She's got a neck injury. What else was it? Knee injuries, and it's just it's tough. It's hard being a woman in this business and to go at the same level as a man goes. And nothing against these women, I love them to death with what they're doing. But I would love to see a women's show.
I don't know.
But it'd be tough going on the same schedule as a man.
I think. Well, the thing is, I don't necessarily. They wouldn't be necessarily going on the same schedule. They'd be going on the NXT. At least in a perfect world, the way I think it would be best suited to do is you have them go on the NXT schedule where they do the 4 shows over the weekend. They tape a month out of the year or a week out of the month. There we go. That's what I was looking for, and then you have. The leading month to do your promos or to do your live shows and things like that. Now, that's another interesting question that would go along with that is how would women's live shows be perceived? And the thing is, I think if you take that roster that they have right now, you have Sasha Banks and Charlotte and Asuka and Alexa Bliss and Bayley and Nia Jax and all of these people. I mean, right now, you talk about overexposure, but the thing is that women at this point, I think, on the main roster are subjected to a severe underexposure. I mean, they're getting better, but really on a 3-hour Raw, 15 minutes to the women, maybe?
And you know what? The thing is, I think if they did pad out the women's roster a bit, I think now is the time is good because the independent scene is so deep with women's talent that they haven't even gone near yet. It is ripe. It's ridiculous.
Candice LeRae, Kimberly, Heidi Lovelace,
Havoc.
Jessica Havoc. There's so many people you can bring in that I think that they could make a women's show easily, and I think that they could do a really good job with it as long as they did it kind of in a similar way to NXT and let that crew or a similar crew handle it rather than and just kind of kept it away from the Raw writing team.
I mean, do I want to believe what I'm saying? No, but I'm trying, like I said, I'm trying to see it from their perspective. What the hell happened there? I'm trying to see it from their perspective and what they would say. Do I want to watch a women's wrestling show every week? Hell yeah, especially with the way that they go. But, seeing it purely from that side, I guess I can see why they wouldn't do it. It's a risk.
To me, the only genuine argument I feel you can make that I can really kind of get behind is that it may actually mean less exposure for the women because you're taking, instead of them being on Raw and pay-per-views and everything like that, now you're moving them to the WWE Network, which has a much smaller audience. So then potentially that hurts their overall exposure, that hurts their paychecks, that hurts their merchandising. However, and I don't know. I'm not in this position of any, not just a woman, but any worker on the roster who isn't getting the time that they need. But I think that if you were to ask the majority of them, like, listen, okay, here's what we can do. You can be on Raw where you'll be part of a 5-minute segment we're just gonna kind of view you as an afterthought, but you're gonna get paid well and you're gonna get to travel all over the world. Or you can stay in one place. Maybe your pay will be a little less, but you will be much, much more prominently featured. I feel like the majority of women's wrestlers are going to take the latter because that's why they're in this business. They're not in this business to make money. Obviously, everybody wants to and needs to.
Of course.
But they're in this business because they want to wrestle and they want to be in important storylines and angles, and they want to make art, and they will get the opportunity to make art there like they would not and will not ever get on the main roster.
I just think a lot of it also, from the other side, is they'll say, women don't draw. But I think the problem with that is they're not going to draw if you don't give them a chance. That's the main issue with it. If you treat them seriously, if you give them a platform to do it...
Here's another thing.
Then they will draw.
Here's another thing.
No doubt.
And I don't know how they handle the NXT tapings now, or what have you, as far as tickets. I don't know if they charge for tickets or if it's free or what sort of deal they have with Full Sail. But if they charge for tickets, I would say if we're doing a women's show at Full Sail, women get in free, period.
Oh, yeah.
If everybody gets in free, then I would put a preference to it. I would, if I was to do a women's show, I would try and get a majority female audience in there. because that is who I would try and market that show towards. We've as much of a blight on television as it is, Total Divas.
Thank you. You just read my mind.
Very popular.
I was going to mention that women love that
very
show.
Popular
as
with
much
women.
as I hate it, try to transition some of that energy
exactly.
into a women's wrestling show, or at least transition it to the matches every week.
It shows that the market is there and that women want to get interested in the women in that company. I think if you, like I said, try and really gear that program towards women, and like the market isn't there, women don't draw. Women will draw with women, and that is a whole 50% of your market that you're not accurately getting to.
Like they're giving them a platform on Total Divas of all things. Come on,
to talk about marriages and getting drunk at bars and talk about kissing each other and stuff. Whereas, like I said, I think women watch it and enjoy it because it's just the fact that they actually get to see a wrestling show, in quotes, that is actually about their gender.
And you get to see something that you
give them something
better. You get to know them a little bit more, and
I think
you get to get behind them. You see them as a bit more human than what they would actually come across as on television.
If you want to work
the wrestling shows,
those backstage elements into it and things like that, then fine. But I think that they're really dropping the ball on not going after that market, and I kind of, like I said, I know you don't think that the time is right. I think now is the perfect time, and I don't think that there's ever going to be a better time than right now to do that.
Let me just straighten it out. Personally speaking, I'd love to see it.
I know, right? No, I get what you're saying, and I get the points.
If I have to look through their eyes with this, I can almost guarantee they'd say, no, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work for this reason. It wouldn't work because, women aren't... We can't invest in somebody that's not going to be around... till 45 years old. We can't invest in somebody that's, we can't invest in a small roster. We're not going to, why would we spend money on this when we can have guaranteed money with this?
It is true. They would need to hire a lot of new people.
We'd have
even with the roster they have, they'd probably need to pick up at least another 10
women. They'll say, are the women's merchandising, is the women's merchandise going to sell as well as the men's?
Yeah.
They'll make that argument. Are we
just going to sell it to women? Can we sell it to men too? I get that. I get that.
There's a lot of different factors that they would say, well, no. And if I had to take that side, I can see where they're coming from. Realistically, though, they can make it happen. They're supposed to be geniuses. They're supposed to make it work. They're supposed to market this thing to people, and there's no doubt there's a market for it. But in their eyes... They just go, well, we're going to throw them a bone here and see how it goes. And then they try it for a few weeks, and then they say, well, it's not really working, so we'll just kind of keep it going. But, lately it seems to be clicking a little more. Hopefully that changes, and, we'll be able to see some of the stuff we've been seeing in NXT on the main roster. So, any thoughts from you as far as that goes?
No, I mean, beyond what's already been discussed, like I said, I just think, I just genuinely don't believe that the main roster will ever, it's always going to be, we're going to see an NXT match happen on the main roster, and it's not going to be as good as it is in NXT, and I feel like if you took the whole women's roster...
And I'm going to throw my jacket over your head!
Oh, God, I can't see, because I'm an adult who had a jacket thrown over my head, and now I have to stop my submission hold.
Oh, that would have been great if she just held on to it.
Yeah, I know. So, I just don't think that the writing team on the main roster is ever going to be able to handle women's wrestling correctly. And by correctly, I mean just like regular men's wrestling. They're never going to be able to get it in their heads that this should be exactly like this. And I think that we need to just cut it completely away.
Cut the shit, book it seriously for a couple of weeks, see how it works out. And go from there. Give them a little more leeway, give them a little more time. At least on the pay-per-views or the special shows or whatever they want to call them, let them tear the house down. I mean, you're not going to take away from the male wrestlers or somebody else's spot on the card if you let them tear the house down. No. I mean, it's going to make the show better all around. I mean, what? Is Becky Lynch going to take away the spotlight from a Randy Orton or a John Cena? I don't think so. It's only going to elevate that company beyond what they're at now. They're going to attract women that love wrestling and are going to continue to love it, or even be inspired to try their hand at it eventually in the future when they see that these women are given a chance. But when you see that they're not given the chance that they deserve, then what do you expect? You expect it to go the way that you thought it would?
Okay. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for us, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to do it for this episode of Change the Questions. We would like to know what you think. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to send feedback, if you're listening to this via podcast, you can either, if you're on iTunes, leave us a nice 5-star review, say some nice words about us. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so at changingthequestions@gmail.com, or you can send us a message on Twitter at changingtheqs, which is at changingtheqs. Also, be sure to like us on Facebook. Check out all of our other shows that we do. We have Time Warp on Mondays, Booking a Better Wrestler on Wednesdays, Let's Play Total Extreme Wrestling on Fridays, and of course, every Tuesday and Thursday, Changing the Questions. That's this show. For Mike Miner.
Goodbye.
My name's Paul Port. See you again soon.
Bye-bye.